I was just saying to myself, it appeared it's always a delight to be at SEDA. I'm a big fan of the work that SEDA does. Actually, I always tell people SEDA was the first ever academic conference I went to in Birmingham, I think it was, back in 2004, possibly, even 2003, I'm not sure. Let's try this way of sharing. And let's see if I can do it like that. Hang on a second, because I'm going to try and blow your collective minds with this. Here we go. So there's the slides, and there's me in the corner. How about that? So I was pleased to see SEDA taking a really positive approach to this conference and singing about the possibilities of the way higher education and teaching in higher education and working and existing in higher education could change for the better. But as you know, I like to start with the bleaker parts. So I want to put to you, taking a note from page 1 of the manual of early morning conference keynotes. So something spectacularly provocative, just to get everybody thinking. So I suggest that this is the state of affairs that we're currently at. People don't actually care that much about the quality of teaching. It's been a long and strange journey to come to this pass, but there's not really at this stage a national conversation about teaching. There's not really any concerted attempt to understand or measure or even assure the quality of teaching, and we're at a little bit of a low ebb, I would say, for anybody in educational development. Grandly hoping that people will disagree with me, but this is the stage we were at going into the pandemic. But then this happened. Students sat on their beds with their laptops, and that was the university experience. And despite the historically low number of student withdrawals this year, students have not been happy. There have been claims, many claims for fee refunds, for additional support. I know there's been a lot that have gone through OAIHE. Students are unhappy with the quality of their teaching, but we don't really know what the quality of teaching is, and we have no way of empirically being sure. This, to me, is the biggest problem that HE, well, one of the biggest problems. They always say things are the biggest problem, but this is definitely up there. This is one of the biggest things that's facing HE at the moment. Students are upset about the quality of their teaching, but literally nobody has a toolkit or a framework to say what actually they should be expecting and what they could reasonably expect during a pandemic, which meant that we all had to be at home and isolated and separate from each other. So a pessimistic view of the point before this. Government and regulators are primarily concerned with outcome measures. And as we learn from the passage of the Skills and Post-16 Education Bill, these are not even a benchmark outcome measures. They take no account of inputs, no account of student backgrounds. How many students are getting a good job? That's what government and regulator cares about. The quality code, the UK quality code, is, I mean, that's largely atrophied. I don't think it's been explicitly said, but I don't think it's an open secret. The QAA have not actually reviewed an existing institution since the start of the Office for Students back in 2017. It's supposed to be the backstop. It's not there. It's just because of this light touch stuff that is the obsession of the regulator at the moment, risk-led regulation, all that kind of stuff. The other thing the government regulators seem to care about is culture wars. They seem to want to either demonize young people for seeking to protect themselves from the stupider end of the internet, and actually pretending to be concerned about their mental health. The two of which being in direct opposition, being something that Gavin Williamson in England certainly hasn't even contemplated. Senior managers and VCs, they care about league tables. Their big issue at the moment is they're not sure what their funding is going to be for the short to medium term. They need defensible documentation. If a regulator is going to charge in and say you're doing poor quality teaching, they're going to say, no, look, here's our learning outcomes, here's all of that. Students is a controversial one. Primarily, if we are to believe the press, students are concerned about the volume of, what's called face-to-face teaching or teaching hours or contact hours that they get. And that is a crude metric measured against value for money. So you will hear students a lot saying, I'm paying £9,250 for this, so therefore this lecture I calculate was worth £37.50. It was terrible. Please could I have my £37.50 back? This is the end point of a 2 decades long project to get students to see themselves as consumers to fuel a market in higher education that's meant to drive up quality. And students, of course, are on the other end of the culture wars. So they're pushing back at senior managers, academics, and government who are pushing back at them, and it's all horrible. What about academics? Do they care about teaching? At this stage, they're massively overworked, they're in precarious employment, they've got a million other things that they actively are measured on and could lose their jobs based on. And there's less visible support for them out there if they are interested in developing their teaching practice. It's not as easy as it has been in the past. For those of you who were here in 2017 will remember I showed you a big graph like this, which demonstrated that external funding for learning and teaching research and development was at an all-time low, and that continues. Do employers care about the quality of teaching in universities? No, not really. You could argue that there is that degrees play a signaling role, that you appoint a graduate, you're looking for somebody with a certain level of maturity that can do a few basic things. Beyond that, you might be looking for somebody who's job ready, that has the exact required skills, because God forbid employers actually pay for their own staff training for new recruits. So in terms of regulation, as I said, OFS have shifted to unwasted outcome measures. The role of the QAA has atrophied, as I say. The NSS is under attack. The one thing that we do to actually ask students about the quality of their teaching in a defensible and rigorous manner, that apparently is, well, it was earlier last year, it was pretty much going to be abolished. My understanding now is that there will be an NSS going forward, but there'll be some changes to it. And of course, we're continuing to defund the learning and teaching infrastructures. Anyone remember Advanced HE or any of the other things that we used to have that supported learning and teaching? Well, they're all gone. But the pandemic has thrown all this into relief. This is from the Office of Students from the 19th of October. They assured students they were actively monitoring universities about the quality of their teaching. They weren't. The anecdotal story is that Michelle Donnellan rang up Nicola Dandridge and said, okay, what about the quality of teaching? Is that all okay? And Nicola says, yeah, that's absolutely, it's all absolutely fine. The quality of teaching is still there. And Michelle asked her, have you actually seen any? What kind of teaching is going on? And it turned out the government was still expecting that somebody was actually looking at and observing teaching and seeing whether it was good or not. And this wasn't happening whatsoever. So as things stand, although students are telling us that the quality of the teaching they're getting currently is not really there, we've got no way of knowing that. We've not really got any kind of a measure. If you ask the OFS, they would send you through the way they regulate. So one of their regulatory objectives is the students should receive a high quality academic experience and their interests are protected when they study in event, provider, campus and course closure. That's half a regulatory objective that could sensibly be linked to teaching. It's surprisingly little. If you look at the actual conditions themselves, there are 6 conditions of registration at the Office of Students rating for quality and standards. 3 of them arguably could possibly link to learning and teaching. That's course design, student support, and outcomes. This is how they're actually measured. So course design is measured by the QAA assessment, which hasn't happened, the National Student Survey that's trying to be abolished, student complaints that go via OAI-HE, and other complaints, which is the direct notification route. Largely the same thing with student support. There's also another thing, admissions views, which as far as I can tell is the research that the Office of Students occasionally publishes and says there are too many students getting a first in this university or something like that. I'm not really certain what that is about. And then outcomes, continuation and completion, degree outcomes, and graduate employment. Graduate employment is the big noise there. Degree outcomes, as I say, is out for debate because people are saying there's too many firsts or not, or that the firsts have got the wrong people. Continuation and completion, that's supposedly a thing. The rates overall are the same as they always have been. There are particular courses and universities that have got problems with continuation and completion, but you can link a lot of these to student background rather than the actual student experience. I can see in the chat that there's lots of people disagreeing with me. This is great so far. So I thought we'd take a look at, because the only live thing that seems to be out there that people are actively looking at and claiming is teaching quality, graduate employment and outcomes. So let's do some actual regulation and let's do some interaction. So I'd like to welcome you all to play your regulatory framework right. So I'm going to show you some data from HESA. What I'd like in the chat is whether the next card in the series is higher or lower. So let's go to our first one. University of Hull, graduates in law, male and female, 3 years after graduation. Their median earnings are 20,100. And we're looking at Manchester Metropolitan University, graphic design, male and female, 3 years after graduation. Are their earnings going to be higher or lower? Just put higher or lower into the chat. 3 highers, 2 lowers. Oh, we're pretty evenly split. I think all of you would enjoy a job at the Office of Students. So let's have a look. It's higher. 23,500. So a graphic design graduate from Manchester Metropolitan University earns more 3 years on than a law graduate from the University of Hull, which means graphic design at Man Met is a better course, according to the Office for Students. Okay, next one, Newcastle upon Tyne, biological sciences. Is that going to be higher or lower? I could just see a lot of people saying lower. David Bone says lower. Peter Hartley says lower. I think you've cottoned on that I'm going to go for stuff that's a bit unexpected. So it is indeed lower, not much lower, not as low as law at Hull, but 22,300 is lower. Now, I do this for a couple of reasons. The first of all is to cheer you up on a grey Monday morning, and after hearing a lot of depressing stuff from me. The second is to illustrate that just how arbitrary this is. That if we're looking at graduate outcomes or highly skilled job, this is going to vary year on year, cohort by cohort anyway. It's not like something that's set in stone. It's very, very difficult to link it to the quality of the course. You've got effects by gender. You've got effects by the background of students themselves in terms of ethnicity, in terms of their educational background. You've got the impact of subject and provider more generally. You've also got the impact of the number of people who might be working part-time. You've got where graduates are currently and the variation of salaries across. I've tried to choose places in the north, but they're not all comparable. Hull is clearly not a place that has the advantages of Manchester and Newcastle, although it is a great place to live and work and study. So how did we get to this? This is the way that we measure the quality of teaching in higher education in England. How did this come about? Surely we had better ideas beforehand. So let's go right back to the major reports, the big boys, as we call it. What did they say about the quality of teaching? So quality of teaching depends on the quality of teachers, said Robbins. He was drawing on Hale here. I talked about Hale back in 2017. We're not going to cover Hale in depth this time. University teachers must keep abreast of new developments in the subject and need time for reflection and personal study, which hard to argue with. Lectures and discussion periods need to be better geared together, and there should also be discussion of material handled in lectures. So that's just linking the course together. It's basic course planning. There's a lovely bit in that that suggests different teachers have got different gifts. Some teachers are really good at small group face-to-face ones. Some teachers are great performing on the stage of the lecture theatre, aren't quite so good face-to-face. Do we ever take any account of that? I don't know if we do. Every university teacher should have a period of instruction in teaching techniques. The very recommendation that sparked the idea of SEDA. And I'm just waiting for James Wisdom to come in and correct me on that, but that's my understanding at least. So the Jarrett Review, 1985. The University Grants Commission, which is what eventually became the Office for Student, has no present intention of taking into account the quality of teaching in funding calculations because it has no reliable way of assessing it. There we are. There was no reliable way of doing it in 1985. We get to 1997. Deering talks a lot about changing. He talks about the new era of higher education. So a big list of things that teachers might have to do, but they will need to encourage all students to aspire to a deep understanding and experience of their area of study. This is absolutely, as James is now saying, they're facing new technology as the better investment. I've just been reading the galley proofs of Audrey Waters' book, Teaching Machines, which is out in August. Strongly recommend you pick that up if you're interested in education technology and its history and how it's always been the same. Again, from Deering, the consensus among many education is the depth of understanding is fostered by an active approach to learning and by forging the links between theoretical and practical aspects of the subject. So that's first in all of these, the first recommendation of a particular modality of teaching, particular approach to teaching. It's our very first pedagogy, and I'm sure I'm not spoiling too much in that this is the only pedagogy that we're going to get from this list of reports from great men, or not so great men. Here's some more Deering. Teaching methods have not changed considerably despite the changes in the learning environment. This is something we hear a lot, isn't it? The old idea, I don't know if you've ever heard Sal Khan talk about the Prussian model of education. Students sit in rows and a teacher talks and the students learn from what the teacher says. And this apparently is terribly old-fashioned, and EdTech is coming along to wipe all of that away. It seems plain that an effective strategy will involve guiding and enabling students to be effective learners, to self-directed learning, to understand their own learning styles. I think that's not a line that's worn particularly well, given that these days just about everybody has realized the idea of learning styles as promulgated in the traditional fashion is largely nonsense, and to manage their own learning. Again, self-directed learning, this is good. Next one is Brown. He didn't say very much about the quality of teaching at all, although he liked the idea of all new academics with teaching responsibilities to undertake a teaching training qualification accredited by the HE Academy and based on the old SEDA model. The only other thing he bangs on about is that student expectations have risen because they're paying more, so teaching should get better, and competition generally raises quality. This was the extent of the Brown intervention into teaching and learning. If providers are competing, then quality is being raised. Olga, this is pretty much the only thing he said. We welcome attempts to consistently measure the quality of teaching outcomes. It was, to be fair, a review of fees and funding. So you would expect not so much, but even so, that was the only line in Olga. So it's still a problem that we've not solved since the early 60s. We don't know really what good teaching is, and we find it hard to express the idea of what good teaching is. I think this is something that we need to be looking at. We need to have an expression of it. I mean, it might be at a base level, it might be controversial, an expression of what actually is good teaching. It would hugely help the debate right now. So this is just a little model of the way the regulatory framework works at the moment. I'm going to remove myself from the picture, I think, because, hang on a second, slideshow from current slide there, and I'll just switch over to the other screen. That one there. So that should have shared. Can you see what I'm sharing on that screen? I do hope so. I'm just going to bring you all back into, can I see the chat? Yes, you can see, that's great. Okay, fantastic. So this is the way regulation currently works in England. It's broadly similar in other countries. Scotland probably have the best of the four systems with the enhancement themes in that they're actually talking about teaching quality enhancement. It starts with applicants. Applicants over here. They rely on signals about quality at a provider, not even explicitly about teaching, just quality more generally. So a lot of reputational stuff is mixed up on there. They go through a large opaque box of teaching and student academic experience. And at the end, we measure some stuff. Just before they leave, we measure their satisfaction. We measure their completion, their attainment, their salary, and whether they have a graduate, highly skilled or worthwhile job. All of that feeds back into signal. There's also the idea of fulfillment, personal growth, health, and happiness. We don't measure that. That doesn't go into the signals, but the quality signals are sent back to the applicants. We don't really know how much impact these signals have on applicants. All the evidence I've seen suggests that people choose their university through talking to people at the university and talking to their friends and teachers, that stuff like Discover Uni and the TEF largely unknown and is only used very sporadically. And we don't really measure them externally facing while they're in there. We do lots of measurements, we do lots of student surveys while we're in there, and that supposedly helps us understand whether we're teaching them well or not based on satisfaction. Now, satisfaction is a complicated idea, and putting students into the position of experts in learning and teaching when they are only experts in their own learning is not an easy one. So let's do another game show. This is getting a bit dry. Here are our students again. They're still not happy. Student feedback fortunes. So in another daring pivot to an 80s game show, I'm going to show you some stuff from the Student Academic Experience Survey about what students are actually saying is good quality teaching and learning. And in the spirit of the show, I'd like you to guess what they might be. What are things that all or most tutors did to support students in 2020? Let's have some stuff in the chat. Come on now. I'm not seeing anything in the chat. All I'm looking for is an example of what students thought good teaching is. Listened and responded. That's a good one. So let's say they were helpful and supported. That's 66% of students said all or most of the tutors did that. PowerPoints on the VLE and replying to emails. I like those, but Not a thing, really sorry. Email students, feedback. I thought feedback would be on there. Feedback is not on there. Big disappointment. Academic advising. Yeah, I guess so. So let's go for guided and supported independent study. And the top one, encourage responsibility for my learning. Available when I needed them. We've kind of covered that a bit in helpful and supportive. Lots of breakouts in live teaching. There was nothing really about teaching practice at all in here. Face-to-face meeting meant a contact hours, lots of materials online. It's all a no, I'm afraid. So I'm going to take you out of your misery. 64% clearly explained goals and requirements. To me, that's a basic hygiene thing. I mean, what am I meant to be doing? How do I know if I've done it? 55% worked hard to make the subject interesting. Teaching at the end of the day is a performance. And this is recognizing that teachers were performing. Nobody said anything about motivation. So motivated to do the best work, that was in there, 51. Oh yes, somebody actually did say something a bit like this, but initiated debates and discussions. And 34%, I like care and empathy, and we kind of have bits of that, we're not expressed like that. Helped explore my areas of interest. So this is student-directed learning. Let's go to the full page. Student-directed learning. We've arguably got something about motivation. We've got the interest thing, and encouraging students to take responsibility for their own learning. That was a big thing. So if you talk to students, and if you talk to those who talk to students a lot, well, no, that's a little bit of a long way around, but a lot of what you'd expect is contact hours. A lot of what you'd expect is standing in front of teachers, like happens at school, is standing in front of students, like happened at school, teaching them stuff. That's not the behaviors that students were reporting as good teaching. So it's a lot more nuanced than that. I was surprised there was nothing about peer stuff as well. To be fair, these were options in the survey that students selected. This isn't the direct words of students. I would wonder if there was that, but I mean, my colleague Jim Dickinson, he likes to argue that the social side and the academic side, students are looking for different things, and that the peer thing is social sides. But yeah, this is a survey of 125,000 UK academic undergraduate students, conducted, I believe, in late 2020. So this is as live as we get it. So I mentioned the QAA. Did the QAA look for any of this stuff about excellent teaching? I went and read the guidance for the quality of standards review for existing providers. So high quality teaching is defined as quality which can consistently lead to credible and recognized positive outcomes to students. That doesn't sound good, that's outcomes. If you think about knowing where students are now, if you think about answering Michelle's question to Nicola, we can't do that like that. And there's some good stuff. The student academic experience encompasses students' experiences of their course and of their sources, support, facilities and opportunities that a provider makes available to support their learning. This is general stuff, this is basic stuff, but it's good stuff. So this is, if they actually reviewed you, which might happen one day, this is the kind of thing they'd look at. Big list of potential evidence about the design and delivery of high quality courses. One of these is the observations of learning and teaching. Now, teaching observations are always controversial. You can always rely, or you always used to be able to rely, once every 2 or 3 years in the All Times Higher Education supplement, somebody would kick off about the idea of having your teaching watched by somebody else that also does teaching. The QAA now have the ability to observe learning and teaching. To me, I think this is key. I think you can't really know anything about learning and teaching, what happens in the classroom, unless you're actually in the classroom. There's lots of stuff we can do to say this points to good stuff happening in the classroom. If students are enthused, that's quite good. You can look in the course documentation. You can see that it all ties together. Credible, robust, evidence-based approaches. That is that the teacher has actually made a choice as to the best way to teach in a particular setting, a particular group of students, a particular subject. That makes sense to me. So observations of learning and teaching demonstrate a clarity of objectives, good planning and organization, sound message or approach, good delivery, appropriate content, effective use of resources, and student engagement. Now that to me is quite close to the survey stuff that we looked at. That I would have said is almost hygiene stuff. It's an indication that we've got an environment in which good teaching can happen, I would argue, if we do all this stuff. But that is a starting point, I think, a starting point. This is the actual quality code itself. It is UK-wide, although the Office for Students seems to be doing its best to ignore it. It's a good document. It is simple. It is pragmatic. It's comprehensible. This is the entirety of the quality code. It's on one page. Unlike the regulatory framework, which is the same length as the Lord of the Rings. And you can distinguish them because, I mean, one is a work of fiction set in a fantasy world where people are heading for largely imaginary goals that will somehow save the world. And the other is about hobbits. Indeed. So in conclusion, I've rattled through this. We still don't have a reliable indicator for quality teaching. There's nothing we can measure that say this is quality teaching. I would argue that we never will. We've tried recently with the learning gain stuff, Camille Handigo-Housen's and other people's work. It's great research, but it just suggested to me that it's not a thing. Any regulatory consensus that reflective practice, this is a thing we used to bang on about. If teachers are thinking about their learning and teaching practice, they're probably better teachers. That was a consensus for about a decade. It's no longer a consensus. The indicator is that teaching quality has largely was it. Is learning gain now a relic from the past? It was an attempt. It was a good attempt to answer these questions. It didn't answer them because arguably the framing was wrong. The idea that we could have a number, that we'd have a graph about teaching, I don't think that's right. So as I've said, both quality enhancement and quality assurance have been replaced by output measures. 2020 and 21 have shown us that this is not enough. We can't look at output measures of stuff that where graduates are 3 years on or 18 months on. We can't look at that and fix the quality of teaching now. We can't look at the NSS, which goes only to final year students and is reflective, is kind of a summative thing. If we want to make changes now to make changing better for students now, we need to know how students are feeling now. We do use our internal surveys. We do talk to students. We need to do more of that. There was a thing in, was it Michael Barber's Gravity Assess? There was a survey alongside that, and he found out that in November, only 20% or something of students had had the opportunity to feedback on their teaching. Now, I mean, firstly, I'm a journalist. I can spot a poll that's been put together to get a headline response. If you'd have asked them that in December after the end of the module, they would all have had a chance to feedback. They probably were also feeding back in a formative sense during the process. They wouldn't have recognized that that was feedback. But is this enough? I don't know. So for the first time in over a decade, there is an opportunity to make the case for a proper understanding of quality in teaching to regulators. And SEDA should be at the forefront of this conversation. From a regulator perspective, a short quality code-like understanding of what is excellent teaching, what is an example of excellent teaching. Is it something that the people in this room could all agree with? Is it something that could actually be drawn up during this conference? Is it something that would be comprehensible to people outside of learning and teaching research? is the quality of the research, is the evidence base there to be able to do it? I would say arguably it can. So I think SEDA are in a really interesting place right now to say, look, this is what quality teaching is. This is what students should expect from teaching. It's been such a long time since anybody has tried to say that. It's been such a long time since there's been any guidance of that sort. And I mean, faced with a complicated picture and a system in crisis, you'd reach for the numbers if you were a regulator, you'd reach for the data. That's the easy argument to make. I love writing about data because the arguments to make are really, really easy, but it's not the full picture. So, I mean, that's what I would like to leave you with. David Baum is disagreeing already. He says, measuring teaching quality is most difficult and pointless. Can we focus on learning? We know about excellent learning. We know what works. Well, let's make that argument. Let's talk about learning. I'm always happy to do that. The problem is, unfortunately, everybody else is talking about teaching. Regulators are talking about teaching. Students are talking about teaching. We need to meet them where they are. I would agree that the long-term impacts of teaching, this is Joanne Tippett, students actually understand the benefits of high quality teaching much later. This to me is why almost student surveys are an important indicator. If students are unhappy now, there's probably a problem now that we can fix, but it's not a measure. I mean, going back to the debate, it's not a measure of teaching quality. But even if you want to call it learning quality, the facilitation of high quality learning, let's do that. So I like Fran Beaton there. You've done Alan Rogers's definition. Good teaching is about creating conditions in which learning is likely to happen. I like that. I like that. David Baum wants to change the conversation to learning. I'd like to do that. I feel like that's a long way around. People are talking about teaching and the quality of teaching already right now. We could spend the time to change the framing. I mean, that to me is a longer job. Even in the noughties, even in like the time when there was massive investment in this stuff, we didn't really manage to change the conversation. People talk about quality teaching anyway. If we can meet them there and it's a conversation that's actually really about learning or the Rogers definition that's been suggested, that's okay. But we need to meet people where they are. We need to meet regulators where they are. They want to know about high quality teaching right now. Ministers want to know about high quality teaching right now. And Richard Nelson, is there a conversation about identity and the weight of the teaching aspect of the academic role in university? Yes, there is. Academics as teachers, hugely under-discussed. A lot of energy is put into discussing academics as workers. This is a really important conversation. As teachers needs to tie into that. If academics as workers are being exploited, they're being underappreciated, they're being undermined, they're on a precarious thing. I mean, that is the fundamental reality. If we could squeeze a place for excellent teaching into that. Good teaching works, says David Baum. Yes, it does. Yes, I would say we would get somewhere with that approach if we said good teaching works. But the next question is, okay, you say this thing works, this box that is good teaching. At the risk of pivoting to yet another game show, we need to open the box. You know, if good teaching works, what is it? How can I have good teaching? How can my practice, how can my provision embody good teaching? Yes, these are big boxes, but you know, SEDA is a big grown-up, serious academic organization, if anyone.
That right there, what he said.
Somebody talking there. I'll pause for a second. If I can turn this into a teachable moment, if I will. It's absolutely important that we speak up about this stuff, even if we're not sure about this stuff. If our measure is, if our message is, we know this, this, and this are the basic fundamentals of good teaching. We don't know about the rest of this stuff. We're still researching. It's a live, active, and a vibrant field. We need to properly resource it. We need to understand how good teaching works and how others can deal with it.